Good morning, gentlemen. I'm going to have a short talk with you on the Taiwan crisis, which has overtaken the world. Let me give you, in brief, what the problem is. The problem is that in 1949, Mao Zedong won the civil war against Chiang Kai Shek. He took control of the mainland, and Chiang and his coterie of gang, or whatever you call it, they escaped to Formosa. Chiang was an ally of the Americans, and this, in fact, was a defeat of the Americans. At that time, Japan was a zero world power, and America was the only omnipotent power in the world. And they decided they would have a one China policy, and that one China would be the China headed by General Chiang Kai Shek. They had a reversal in 1972 because Nixon and Kissinger thought they were very clever and they made overtures to the Chinese and they dumped Mr. Chiang Kai Shek into the South China Sea and went the way, the full way to Beijing, paid obeisance to Emperor Mao, and said, "Yes, sir, we accept you as an equal and as the only China." So, in effect, the policy was there's one China, and that is the China which rules from Beijing, and Taiwan is a renegade province. It is recognized by the world now all over. But maybe the Americans had a change of heart later on, and they decided they couldn't hand over Taiwan straight away to the Chinese. And China was belligerent. It was looking forward to ways and means which would get that province back into their fold. But they were thwarted. They couldn't do it because they didn't have the amphibious capability to mount a seaborne invasion. Now, Taiwan is separated from China by what is known as the Taiwan Strait, which at its narrowest is about 120 miles. And to bridge that gap, launch amphibious assault with air cover and necessary paraphernalia, landing craft, etc., not yet within the realm of the Chinese army. They don't have the capability. While the Americans have got a very superior naval force led by two aircraft carriers, what they call the Seventh Fleet, facing China. This situation has continued for the last almost 50 years, and the Americans thought everything is honky dory, everything going fine. We'll keep on with having friends with Taiwan as well as China. But China believes only in one thing, and that is the superiority of the Chinese power. They don't want to share their power with everybody. They want the return of the Middle Kingdom. They feel they have been exploited by the Western powers, particularly the British, the Americans, and the French, everybody. There was a time China was forced after the Opium Wars to cede Hong Kong, give special permissions to the foreigners in Shanghai, and so many concessions they had to give. But all that changed in 49 when Mao Zedong came to power, and he had one point aim to make China a great power. He's made it. There's no doubt about it. But as it stands, the Chinese are angry and they are looking forward to incorporate Taiwan back into their country. It's not easy. It's not easy, certainly, because Taiwan has been militarily built up by the Americans. That's number one. Number two, the Taiwanese themselves don't want to join China. They're happy as it is. They would like to be an independent country. And thirdly, there are many countries in the world who feel that Taiwan should be allowed its own living space. Now, what's going to happen? China cannot accept the status quo to continue indefinitely because it would be a black mark on their military, on their ability, on their standing in the world. It means what exactly China up to if you can't take back your own renegade province. It is something like the Andaman Islands being given to somebody and becoming independent, India saying, "Oh, we can't take Andaman Islands." It would be a big slap in the face of the Chinese. So China has built up its military superiority, and they had it use a what do you call a reason to get cracking, and that was recently the visit of Nancy Pelosi, the highest top ranking American leader to visit Taiwan in 25 years. He came. China made a tremendous hue and cry, and there was even some reports that they would shoot down her plane, but it's not so easy. And in any case, I don't think they had any plan to shoot down any plane. But at the same time, China could not allow the Americans to have a free hand. And now there's another senior delegation of American senators which are in Taiwan at the moment again. Now, where do we go from here? China has been flexing its muscles. It's been firing rockets, missiles all around Taiwan. And on a daily basis, their aircraft are invading the Taiwan defense zone. The ORP has kept in readiness, that is by the Taiwanese, and they take off to intercept the Chinese. The Chinese turn back. At one stage, the Russians and Chinese bombers had joint exercise on the South China Sea. These are what is called as a threatening tactics of nation, and this is what China is planning. Now, the question which many people have asked is China really going to mount an invasion? Well, I will say that at the moment they are not going to do anything. At the moment means for the next few months, China will continue this belligerent attitude without really moving forces against Taiwan. For the simple reason that their capability is not there and they could suffer a defeat. You shouldn't forget there's a similar type of invasion planned by the Cuban rebels with the aid of the CIA to overthrow Castro way back in, I think, 1961. And the net result was that Castro won. And that famous Bay of Pigs invasion floundered into the Caribbean Sea. So they don't want that sort of thing happening. So if they have to fight, they have to fight to win. Because that's what Field Marshal Manekshaw had said. He told his soldiers, you are supposed to go and fight. And if you lose, don't come back. Die. Do whatever you feel like. Don't come back. So Chinese can afford to lose in Taiwan. And if they do that, all their Belt and Road scheme, everything they're standing in the world will become zero. So if they have to fight, they have to win. And at the moment they fight, they cannot win, so they are not going to fight on Taiwan. So you may well ask, why are the Chinese doing all these things? These are called pressure tactics to show the Taiwanese, look, take it easy. We can be very, very devastating. They can be, but then they can bomb Taiwan to submission, but that's not going to help them at all because you need the infantry soldier to hold the ground. That's what Field Marshal Montgomery had said. You can't fight it. And the Chinese infantry, how are they going to transport them to Taiwan across 120 miles of the sea? And after all, you shouldn't forget that there is the American fleet with the aircraft carriers. The Chinese, I'm told, have been carrying out all sorts of exercises in the uh, Gobi Desert with the aircraft carriers, cardboard models of them. But these are all, for food, for the paraphrasy, for the press and everything. Militarily, I don't think they have any meaning because one of the facts is the Chinese Navy has not been tested in any combat till since 1949. The army last fought was in 79 and they didn't do very well against the Vietnamese that time. And in the recent clash with India, it's not been a one-way ticket for them as either. So what is the result? The Chinese do not have battle experience, while the American Navy has been fighting battle for the last 100 years. So we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen now. But I'm no crystal gazer, but I can tell you that China at the moment is not going to make any attempt to invade Taiwan. What the Chinese are looking forward to is something else. They're looking for an internal implosion in Taiwan and a regime coming up which is more susceptible to Chinese, and they say, well, we want to join China. That is not going to happen. And the crucial question remains that China will allow the status quo to continue or they're going to do something. Well, they cannot even allow the status quo to continue. That again is a sign of weakness. So there are 2 points which I made out. One is if they fight, they have to win. Number two, they can't allow the status quo to continue. So there has to be a solution, and the solution ultimately will be a military solution at some stage, but that will be at the Chinese terms. And it will depend on two things. One is the American resolve to fight China. If it's going to be the same way as they have done in Ukraine, give some weapons, GMO, and all that, and then sit back and watch what's happening, Taiwan will be lost. Russians have taken substantial areas of Ukraine, and the Americans are sitting and watching. They took away the entire Crimea in 2014, and the Americans watched. And that time Obama was the president. And if they follow the same tactics in Taiwan, you know what's going to happen. So it's a very, very important question of world history as to what happened to Taiwan. I think the only way forward is for the world to recognize Taiwan as an independent country. And if in case 20 or 30 major countries of the world recognize Taiwan as an independent country en masse, led by, say, the United States, England, and some African and Asian countries, the Chinese will be thwarted. But if they don't do that and they try to continue with the status quo, Taiwan ultimately is going to fall into the Chinese lap. And once it does that, Japan is going to be threatened. Japan is going to have a tough time. The Philippines, all of them will be threatened. So, gentlemen, that's all I have to say at the moment. Sit back and relax at the moment. There's no battle coming in. But as I've already pointed out, the options for the Chinese are very limited. And I do hope something worthwhile comes up. I close now, gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this short video and take care. God bless. Look after yourself and do share this video with your friends. Subscribe and I close now. Jai Hind. God bless you all.